wasteful format.
Yeah, that was sort of my thought.
Embrace your bliss.
What make is this anyway?
Tektronix.
Okay. Oh, it is, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me actually.
Logo somewhere.
Embrace your bliss.
You're doing the YouTube live streaming?
Yep.
Yeah, right there.
Is the food here yet?
Do you have the password for the Boston Demo Scene channel?
I do not. I could stream it to that if you want.
Make you the
Just missing a dump.
one of the admins. You could sign in as it.
My YouTube handle is simply MixSam7. I don't know what you need to actually make me an admin email or what.
But they're mine. Because one day,
Those things are recorded, right?
might
They're
break
recorded.
before I die. So I need to have backups.
Right now I just have it on my channel.
Oh, yeah.
Test.
The bottom cans and notepads, you know. Excuse me.
Kevin, what size shirt did you sign up for?
I don't. Luis, I'm going to set your monitor up. The machine's going to have slides. It
Congratulations,
doesn't
you're
have
doing
hard
an extra
drive
large.
because the hard drive had like.
Pretty much extra large, medium, or double XL.
This thing's got a fan in it, man. Woo! It's casting breeze.
Yeah.
Yes.
You see how many tabs are in it?
I have Win 7.
Yeah.
I just.
That's insane.
Okay, yeah,
We,
well,
did you
yeah,
just tell me we
it's-
completely disassembled the power supply?
Oh, you did?
And there was nothing else wrong with it, right?
We had no idea how to get it apart. It turns out you take these two screws out, the whole thing. goes.
Oh.
These are, you don't even take them out, you just loosen them.
You can find it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's got a.
Computer through airport.
It's got like a 60, 70.
We checked it.
It's got very large. The radio is 6870.
Well, I
It's
checked that.
we could play demos. They just go faster.
I didn't get here.
Oh, really? They lost your stuff? You need anything?
Yeah, I've got well, we probably could be there now, here.
They'll probably drive it to you. This is
Yes, they said, but hoping maybe it'll come on the next week.
We're gonna write HT lines, pressure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know.
We wouldn't be broadcasting if that happened to us.
Yeah.
I can be 35 footer. Might as well use that.
Well, I think I'm gonna just.
Yeah, we'll just use the 35.
Just use mine now.
And then this to the beach.
There's a website, there's a forum that says how to do HTML live streaming. I just down.
What are you trying?
Google Cache. You know, use
Actually, here it is. Where you can double it back. Trying to get that to live HTML.
what's up here?
So I've got
It doesn't, the hard drive.
chargeables.
Yeah, it's nothing like support, so don't make any sense.
In case you were curious, that's the backup
For a spinning cube.
that will project from way the F down there because it sucks.
Yeah, battery's not too
But
low.
it's better than
Only one direction.
I see. And I got it for free. What? There's a projector in the other room, so we don't need it. We don't need a second screen. There's nowhere to really put it except like on the ceiling.
Dr. Qual, you guys don't own this screen, right? It's on my,
No, the screen is the thing that I don't need.
yeah, I'm just saying.
something expensive to opt.
Well, I mean, it's not like these other things aren't expensive, it's just that the screen is sort of kind of space specific. Like if we move to a smaller space.
Not exactly a household.
Yeah, then again, I don't really want to go any larger for that projector, because I'm sort of at the limit of its capabilities with that one. I mean, I got it when we were, I got it when we were, still in, actually, no, I got it, the first time we used it was when we were in Boston. But
Couldn't use it in that upstairs space.
yeah, that's where we used it. But the problem,
The room was fairly small.
yeah, well, oh no, we didn't use that screen, we just projected straight on the wall. It would have helped to have used that screen because holy shit, during the daytime, the room was really bright. Is there actually a way to like close it?
Yeah, it's report. Power sheet.
Oh, it is closed. As much as it needs to be.
Right.
I mean, if I turn the lights off, you'll notice there's very little coming in there. So it's no big deal. I mean, you were here last year.
Yeah, but I only vaguely remember that.
Mixing demo splash and that part.
The skylight will open, but right now it's basically closed. There's a little light around the edges, but these bulbs are way brighter. Especially on one above my head that makes noise when the subs go. I need to do something about that or I'm gonna go insane. Tell you all.
You're going to build it.
Hey, I'm not insane right now. Yeah, give me a couple hours, all right? I'll definitely be insane tomorrow. I've got it. I progress. I figured this out.
I'm actually at the presentation right now, which is the State Center. By the way, yeah, I'll probably go to that no, it hasn't started yet, so nothing's going on with it. I just make sure it's clear where it was. Scan that.
Oh, yeah, I really. I think it's already set. So, that's why it's in the plug. Now I have.
I only have to whatever was it recommended hits, so what are you doing?
What's that?
I'm trying to consume less than a full row of tables, but it's hard.
I see. And you still want to actually go to something. Okay.
Fill it that loose because it's button in.
It's
More.
This could totally just go.
so this is the one that's coming. That's on the wall there. And Oh, okay.
I should ask her if there's something. Oh, no, you did what you needed to do. We'll need a ride tonight. That's it. If I'll need something, she'll let you know. All right. Thank you.
All right, sounds great. Bye.
So what we're gonna do is start with the nose. Turn it on C scan. So you can see. Okay. Good. Is it pizza? Is pizza here?
I don't know. No one told me this. If you can find that would be awesome. Right now, I'm trying to get the.
We're supposed to be like starting.
Yeah.
It is here. You'll look at it. Pizza's here, which some may have just said, but.
First speaker's here.
Yep.
Pizza's here too.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to make sure the first speaker is happy and third, let's see, time for you? Actually, I want to twist that.
Okay. Cool. Mike,
Yeah.
Luis, Seth,
Hello.
and then Mitchell is our first speaker, so.
So, there's a mic down there, there's an audio, there's an audio and VGA and some power. Excellent. Cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
your instincts.
Yeah, I don't think this is critical. You should definitely. I'm sure this guy will. Actually, can you just run down there and talk to that mic for a second so I can make sure the levels are okay? If they are.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. A, B, C. Hello.
I imagine he's going to be louder than you, but we're fine.
Should I speak a little louder?
No, that's fine. He'll speak louder. I'm gonna get a little food and remember that in here. I got 7. And then you have any audio? With
No audio.
okay, cool.
You know, the one thing I ask is, at the end of the keynote, I'd just like to show a piece of equipment and what it would like.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We can do it. I mean, everybody break your nose. There's a little bit. If you like, yeah, so sometimes you have to hit it and put it again.
Awesome. You too. Something. Sorry. Oh, right as I was. Sorry.
Is the stream on? Awesome. Hello, Internet.
Hello, Internet.
Okay, welcome, folks. Hi, everybody, and welcome to At Party 2014, the 5th year of this event. And the first demo party to survive this long in this hemisphere. So enjoy our first speaker. We'd like to thank our sponsors. The MIT Game Lab, who has supported us for all 5 years of our existence. Yep. Bathsheba Sculpture, who has provided our, demo combo trophies for several years now. HomeAdvisor.com, and several other folks, including Trickster and some anonymous folks. So thank you very much to our sponsors. Thank you very much to MIT, and to all of you who are watching on the screen and here in person. Enjoy. Can we turn on the lights at the front so you can see? Okay, that's awesome. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. So, I'd first like to tell you
what I do here at MIT, but I'm going to show you something a bit different. I'm the head of photography and spatial imaging initiative at the MIT Museum, and I also direct a new space on campus for art and engineering collaborations called the MIT Museum Studio. And it's located just under the Building 10 dome in 150. And there's some information about that if you'd like to learn about it that I'll leave you. But what I'd like to tell you about this evening is my own artwork that sort of is the kind of the root system of what I do. And in fact, I created this art form as a student at MIT.
Yep.
So this work is, I think in the context of this gathering, it's a bit old school. It doesn't use computers, and some of what I'll show you is from the past, but I'm also working on current pieces that I'll tell you a little bit about. So when I came here as a student, I was a painter and a gymnast, and I was posed with the challenge of creating my own art form at what was then the Center for Advanced Visual Studies. And so I started working with light to extend my body. And what I was interested to do was to, in terms of perception of viewers, to become space and time by extending my body with light and embodying space. So I started developing the conceptual ground for this work, and also learning about light and optics, electronics, light-based technologies to start to create the equipment for to match my artistic vision. My experiences as a gymnast were not as much about sport as they were about the relationship between my inner space, or the inner human experience, and the outer world. If you think about gymnastics that way, it's all about pushing the limits of that relationship between inner and outer forces. I might mention that growing up and training in gymnastics, I did so with my identical twin. And that was a distinct advantage because we were like mirror images of each other, so to speak. We could perform for one another and in that way feel quite distinctly what the movements were like inside ourselves as we watched each other. And it really gave a kind of momentum to our development in the sport. But it was about exploration of the control of the human body and the pushing of the limits of the body. And gymnastics was the vehicle. So these are early drawings that I did as a student here, leading to my first piece of equipment. This was in the late 1980s. So you can imagine, perhaps, that all the light from the space is removed. And then I introduce light from the instruments that are mounted on my body. So in this case, I have 4 projectors. Each casts a plane of light from my arms and legs. And then as I move, the light reveals the space, but it does so not as ordinary illumination, but in a way that is directed by the relationship, the changing relationship between the body and the architecture. So what, in essence, what's created in the experience of viewers of the performance is a kind of fluid architecture by how the light is articulated through the body movement. And at this time, I was using my gymnastic ability to control the light. And something that proved quite useful because, depending on the distance from my body to the boundaries of the room, the speed and the size of the light is amplified. So my body movements had to be quite controlled and slow in order to move the light in an appropriate manner to sculpt the space. So I started developing other pieces of equipment using different kinds of light sources and experimenting with different spaces. So perhaps even in that video clip, you can feel a bit of how if everything works together, that is, the body movement, the light, and the architectural setting, they, in a sense, merge. And the feeling, for me and for viewers, is one of this kind of extensive body that is shaping the space and the time and perception of viewers. The space expands or contracts or warps depending on how the light is articulating the space. I moved into holography to explore its potential in this context. I started making very large-scale diffraction gratings to work behind with light sources on my body so that I could create these kind of costume architectures of light. And the combination between the extended light sources and the gratings allowed me to structure in depth these optical costumes, so to speak. I've also done work by controlling the architecture itself. I'm not just using found spaces. As you can imagine, the spaces and the materials, the quality of the surfaces all matter very much. And so in 2002, for a memorial service, you may know the name Jerry Kepish, an MIT Institute professor who founded the Center for Advanced Visual Studies, had passed away, and I was asked to create a performance for the service. What you see here is the total performance in one image. And I've built a structure, like a giant optic, you know, the architectural setting that is on stage in this case, the Kresge, is like a four-sided pyramid on its side. And the performance begins at the outermost circumscription of light and progresses in to the concentration at the center. So by structuring the architecture in this manner and then coupling, again, the light and the movement, I'm able to create spaces around the body that change with my progression up the ramped floor of this structure. Performance completed with the concentration of the light apparently into my body as I move the laser instrument into these shallow nested cones. In these performances I have laser light point arrays that extend from my body, and they define layers of space that, you know, as the raster expands and contracts or warps, it creates these kind of virtual spatial layers, because the laser is so precise in not only in its spacing, but in its limited illumination of the space. Someone had to do this. I've also done a number of so-called light dances in the night sky, collaborating with the artist Pina, using optical costumes and other techniques for this application. Now I'd just like to show you a piece of equipment. Obviously, in performance, you know, the space has to be conducive, as I've explained. But here, even in this demonstration, I hope you can get a bit of a feeling.
Actually, I had a question and then it was answered by the next example, but I was wondering if you did much with volumetric, atmospheric effects with, with using foggy air. I noticed you're playing more on the surfaces of the architecture.
Yeah, I mean, I have experimented with that quite a bit. But I find it's a bit tricky to use because it's so heavy in its connotations, and the experience of it is, really contextualized off of like a disco or
Right.
Or certain, spectacles or theatrical performances.
That's true.
But that's not to say, I think, especially with current technologies, I mean, like laser, you could, as I think you're pointing to, get quite strong volumes of light with very little diffusion, right? Material in the space, not like big foggy air, but rather something you don't even see, but just enough to help you see the beam. So I think there's likely something more to do with that.
I'm curious to see your current gadget come out and see that.
You talked some like the spaces in expansion, the tracking of the light on. Like, do you feel like that's unique to every space that you perform in, how that works out? Or do you have some kind of like vocabulary of I can do this to kind of create this sort of dimension?
Well, it is different for every space. But it is like, it's kind of like, I don't often choreograph strictly. So it's very much a response to the space and the moment. So it's, there is a kind of vocabulary that I tend to rely on. I'm not saying it's the only one. In fact, at the times, or maybe often, I felt limited by it. My body is trained in a certain way, etc. There are other ways this equipment could be used. And I think new kinds of light performances can be achieved. But it's always a combination between sort of what's inherent in my body and my movement and my experience doing this work, and then what is the nature of the space and what is it for? Something always comes out of that. And I mean, like any performance, I have to be really connected with the moment and the environment, and really feel myself extended, which is something that's not that hard in a case like this because the light is so clear and effective in capturing the space. But in performance is the need to really become that light and work the space. And that's what I was alluding to with regard to having to move the light instead of just having to move the bodies and dance. Totally different. So I have to be in that moment, and then that makes it a little bit more like jazz, a piece of the established composition.
Have you or anyone else experimented with multiple performers in the city?
Some, but there again, I think more could be done. One time I had this commission and had a whole troupe of dancers, and it was really difficult, because I think something about the nature of the performances, I didn't even mention, but they're almost always in silence, and they tend to be very brief and highly concentrated. And so you have multiple performers, and you're supposed to fill 45 minutes or something like this. I think this could be applied, but it would probably have to be pushed in another direction than what I typically do. I find it stronger. Performances that I create are strong as these highly concentrated visual events. I mean, if it occurs, like I mentioned, where there's a feeling, even for a moment, that the body becomes light and embodies space, and the space is transforming, driven by the body. It's like, it's like an amazing experience, and that's what the pieces are about. They don't have a narrative, and they It's just after that moment, and sometimes that moment can be extended, but that moment is enough for me. That's how the work emerges. What is driving it.
And just photography, especially in this presentation format, is a very important part of the work. But do you do this as a live act for a present audience as well?
Oh yeah, that's almost all that I've done. This is for documentation. There are some images in there, a few that were done just with the camera, but almost all of that is live performance. However, if I try to do it in this space, I'm afraid it wouldn't work well because, the hard architecture and all the furnishing would give it all away. Then it looks like light effects in an auditorium. Whereas the space has to be right, everything has to be right, to lend itself toward this kind of crossing of boundaries that I mentioned. So it's a very delicate kind of thing, where all the light has to go away and so forth. So it takes a special kind of setup.
Well, as someone else who's strapped lights to his body and performed, some people remember that. I think that's really, your work is very cool. The cleanliness of it, the simplicity is so important. I tend to go a little too far.
It's a huge strap light.
Yes. I have a suit. It's more about playing the lights as opposed to the movement of the lights. It's more about the patterns I generate. Switching the lights.
Well, maybe we're kindred spirits. Maybe you're the long lost triplets.
So you said that your performances are generally sort of, for the most part, an improvisation when you get on stage, or when you get in your space. So when you're planning out or when you're going into your performance, do you have sort of narrative or impression that you want to portray, or is it more just a sensory experience that you're trying to create?
Well, yeah, a moment ago I said there was no narrative, but it may not be 100% accurate. Maybe what you're pointing at is that it's not pure play like there is. I'm going after something, and that can be informed by the space. So like in that memorial service, the blue laser, it was a very specific thing I was going after, and the structure was built as an altar. So it had a certain context. I was really trying to use my work to sort of create this moment of touching between life and death. That somehow the other side can be touched for a second through the performance. You see what I mean? Because there's so much energy in a memorial service, and in this one, how could that energy be used to resonate with the performance and give some sort of pathway for this, desire to sort of connect with the other side, And the performance would be about that. It's a kind of alter and this kind of transformation that I mentioned. Transformation being, in perception, the body becomes light and becomes space and time. And thereby there's this kind of dissolution of the body, but at the same time, there's a different kind of embodiment, and it's crossing boundaries, or habits of perception that are dissolved a little bit, and that has something to do with death. So in that case, I'm going after something, and there is a kind of structure, for a narrative, I guess you could say, to the movement, and it isn't totally ad-lib. It has some structure to what I'm going to do, and then, but as I said, it has to be in the real now to be effective. I can't keep thinking about just following the movements. I have to really be inside of it, in that mindset to make it come off the way I'm intending. So that's even if it might be in a temple, we've done a lot of research in India, so it might be in a temple, in a Hindu temple, and then it has a very specific structure to the space and the atmosphere and and the mindset of people, and so I'm trying to do something specific for bringing it all together into a visual moment. So it is structured.
All right, we're out of time for questions, but let's all thank the
Thank you very much. Okay. Oh, sure. Sure, I can even hold it. Okay. Alrighty then. Hi everyone. My name is Arlene Ducal, and I am a fairly recent alum of the Media Lab here. This is my first demo party, and it's great to come here. It seems so, maybe not, only MIT, but very MIT in its spirit and ethos from what I can tell so far. I'm going to, I just about a month or 2 months ago, Val approached me about talking about my project MindRider. So I'm going to sort of tell you about sort of the journey that this project has had. It was my first project at the Media Lab. I'm calling this talk, "This is Your Brain on Bike," because it kind of goes back to my own personal journey as a cyclist in an urban environment. Let's see. So MindRider is basically a helmet that, sorry?
We're not getting you on the projector.
Oh, okay.
You might have to switch your monitor or something like that.
Switch my monitor?
Yeah, just make sure you're sending to this to the projector. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's start again. So, thanks for your patience. Hi, Marlene. So yeah, the first slide. This is MindRider, and this was the first sort of incarnation, iteration of the helmet. And so the story behind this is that I am an avid commuter, but I think like many of us who move through the environment in some way, particularly in urban environment, I think Cambridge, to a certain degree in Boston, definitely counts as an urban environment. It can be quite stressful. And so, even though I really enjoy moving throughout the environment as a cyclist, there are, I think that there are ways that we can better navigate throughout the environment. And so MindRider was an attempt to sort of externalize what is internal and basically show to the person moving throughout the environment, the cyclist or the skateboarder, what he or she is experiencing and how place, how movement can, how that engages one's ride. And so basically this is through an embedded simplified EEG device in the helmet. And this first iteration took the brain state of the user and visualized that on a color scale from green to red, originally a nod to the visual vocabulary of traffic lights. And so green represented a calm sort of, not sort of like cool, less quantitatively focused state, and red represented high attention, high focus. And in the years that I developed my writer, I have observed that the value gets to red when there's a lot of like quantitative focus or very specific interactions. And so this first comment externalized that color as something that the motorist could see. It was very much sort of focused on communication to the external environment. And so that was originally a one-off project, and sort of thought, okay, that's that, and I have some other things to work on, and I thought that would be that. But a couple of years later, last summer, another researcher at the Media Lab named Sandra Richter, who had done a number of qualitative social cycling studies, approached me and asked, can we introduce MindRider into a new social cycling study that is slightly different from what she'd been doing before. So one, what she'd done was qualitatively focused. It was focused on interviews. And two, it was focused on all different kinds of people. She had conducted a series of studies in New York. From her original research, she decided to sort of zero in on women, because women were kind of a transitional group from what she could tell, in that women really seemed to, their cycling experience really seemed to be supported by social experiences. They felt more comfortable biking with a buddy, biking in groups, and so that's something that she wanted to delve into more quantitatively. And so what we did, and then they'd ride together, and there would be an interview after each of the rides, and conclusiveness as to how social cycling risks. But it was significant for the progress project to a state where it was GPS, and we were sort of tracking people's brain states as on the map, and sort of seeing those visualizations after the fact, and using them to analyze rides, and then also sort of data logging and all that kind of stuff. So one thing that I was interested in sort of going through these iterations is thinking about the wearable of the wearable aspects of the helmet as well. Its comfort, the way that it looked, and also since there are these new sensors and new sorts of unfamiliar aspects that you don't really have when you wear a helmet, for instance, a grounding electrode that you clip to your ear, I wanted to sort of ascertain what was the most comfortable and what was the most wearable over a long ride. So this is one of our early maps from when we started to log EEG oriented rides. This is my ride near here, MIT. And you can kind of see that red to green gradient and sort of see where they're, I think, sort of where those high traffic areas, traffic, whether they be pedestrian traffic or motorist traffic, tend to influence the ride. And so from there, I moved back to my hometown of Brooklyn and embarked on a fellowship at an art and technology center in Manhattan called iBeam. And it was specifically focused on computational fashion. So my longtime collaborator, Elias Cohen, who's in the middle, and I brought on board a fashion designer named Josue Diaz. He's a knitwear designer at Fury, to sort of continue those thoughts about ergonomics, about design, and sort of implement them more deeply from the inside out. So the three of us, this was our Christmas card, and there the three of us are wearing sort of different
different kinds of helmets that explore different things. So I'm wearing a 3D printed helmet that sort of, pushes the boundaries of what a helmet can be. Obviously, it's not very functional as a bike helmet. Linus is wearing a helmet that's outfitted for all intents and purposes with MindRider circuitry. And then Josue is wearing sort of the most comfortable of our 3 helmets and experimenting with external caps. So since originally MindRider was sort of like very much in the Media Lab type project, but since then we've been replicating or sort of producing the prototype in small batches and getting them out on the streets, and we've been finding some interesting things. So these are 3 MindRider users. On the left is Josue, the knitwear designer. He's a very avid cyclist. And avid commuter. So since last fall, he's been MindRiding, on many days. And then in the middle is a new cyclist and a new urban cyclist named Alex. And so we wanted to sort of put the MindRider on someone who, is not so comfortable and not so used to cycling in the city. And then on the right is a skateboarder and a rollerblader named Julia. And so, we wanted to sort of expand, see how MindRider's use could be expanded beyond just the cycling community. And there were some sort of interesting observations, particularly between avid, experienced bike riders and novice bike riders. The skateboarders are a little more new on our scene, so we're still sort of figuring out what the uses can be in that domain. But between the avid cyclists and the new cyclists, we see like a pretty marked difference in the kinds of rides they want to cultivate with MindRider. So Josue is really interested in sort of the mindfulness aspect, the meditative aspect of MindRider. And so when he's riding through an area where he knows that he tends to overfocus, he will sort of use the MindRider to help him as a kind of game to help him to mindfully be a little more relaxed going through those areas. A newer rider like Alex, we've been noticing, is more interested in sort of taking the areas of high focus and attention on his ride and using them to exercise more caution while he's still figuring out the environment that he's cycling in and getting used to sort of the rhythm of the street. So now I'll dive a little bit into some of the maps we've been collecting. And as I mentioned, Josue has been riding since last fall, so he's been MindRiding since last fall. And I wanted to highlight some of the sort of regular patterns that we see on his maps. It's interesting because a lot of what we see in terms of like patterns that come about are the extremes. So the places that are very red on his map tend to be very red day after day over time. And the same thing with the places that are very green. We see those clusters sort of day after day over time. And one area on his ride that has tended to be red is this turn onto a very high traffic street in Nolita, Soho, that it always sort of pops out. Here, he finds particularly interesting because these are 2 streets that are very close to each other in the same neighborhood. But one has a bike lane and is a pretty clear low traffic street. And the other one doesn't have a bike lane and it's a cramped street. And so, we've been seeing kind of, day after day after day, the sort of sweet spot versus hot spot that are so close together. And so, we started to term the very like pure green areas sweet spots and very pure red areas hot spots. And something like this has, sparked the interest of folks who are working on, say, bike share in New York, the Department of Transportation, because it's sort of, with a lot of these sort of quantified self devices, a lot of times they tell you things that you already know. They tell you that you walked however many number of miles. You kind of already do that. But by sort of quantifying that, it helps you to sort of understand over time and understand aggregated over many people or over a spatial area, and sort of see insights that you didn't necessarily have anecdotally. And so here's one other aspect of Ghost Ride that was popping up over and over again, is that he always had this sweet spot on the Manhattan Bridge, and so, which is a car, the cycling and pedestrian area is completely separated, and it's not heavily trafficked, so he tended to sort of, use that time to, well, he already uses that time to relax, but he, with that, empowered with that knowledge that this is one of the most, longest relaxed stretches on his ride, that was something that he found to be very meaningful. So I'm gonna take a moment here to show you a quick clip from Discovery Channel, which I think explains pretty well some aspects of Mind Rider's data. So hopefully the sound will work. Oh no. Just try to be on it.
Cycle. It's a popular way to get around town, but if you live in a big city, it can be tricky and downright terrifying. Arlene Ducal is creating something that might have. It's a helmet called Mind Rider that maps your brain waves right to your phone, so you can see and avoid the routes that stress you out the most.
So this is actually a sensor that touches your brain, and then this is a light that you can see while you're riding that will indicate your brain state.
The light is on a gradient between green and red. Green means I'm relaxed, while red means I'm getting stressed out.
Okay, so we're now connected, and yes, you can see that this conversation is a pretty relaxed, meditative conversation.
Today, I'm taking to the main streets to test out Arlene's latest prototype.
This is the first time that all of the parts are together, so you'll be the ones that bring it in. Okay, so we're here in Prospect Park, and barring the rain and the old bike, it's a very relaxing ride.
I think I'm pretty relaxed right now.
You are, yeah. Actually, you are turning more yellow. You're concentrating more, and if you have to concentrate a lot, you'll turn red.
Okay, all right, cool. So I can start my app, right? Start tracking the data.
Exactly, yeah. We'll map you out.
Arlene!
Great! How was that?
I'd like my next location, and this one is a little different.
Okay, then here we are. Now you're turning a little yellow already.
I was trying to keep getting awareness. I can't even really talk about it. People drive like maniacs in this city.
Overall, you're quite meditative and relaxed throughout the trip. There are some parts that you spike up a little bit in terms of your concentration. Like here, where I'm zooming in a little bit, is probably the warmest part of your ride.
I think I know what happened there. That actually was the end of the bike path.
Oh.
And I didn't know where to go. And it wasn't an obvious thing, so I came back around and I think I chose poorly because I ended up coming back the wrong way.
Okay. Some other interesting parts right here, you're on this street where you're kind of smooth sailing and it's super green, but then you have this little burst of warmth here.
I know exactly what happened there too. That was when the guy yelled at me.
Wrong way.
I wasn't going the wrong way. He dropped an F-bomb.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
that's going to stress anybody.
There you go. That's your New York moment. Okay, so this is a map of your ride in one of the busiest parts of Brooklyn.
Look at how dark the data is there.
Yes,
Compared to the park ride?
absolutely, yeah. There are a lot more warm colors, browns, oranges. And it's really fascinating because you can see the ebb and flow of your brain state in traffic. You can see how it gets greener and then darker and then greener and then darker again.
Seems to happen at every intersection.
Exactly, yeah, every traffic light. There were some really sticky parts around some of those lights.
Aside from the rain and as busy as it was, some intersections and the guy yelling at me in the park. I mean, I did everything in.
One thing is in the software, how to collect data without, lagging, leading to performance lag. So, there's kind of a common big data issue. And in the hardware itself, you might have noticed that sometimes the light that you saw started to fade out, and that light was really draining on the battery. So, issues that are all small things, but there are a lot of small things.
She might have a couple of tweaks to make, but our links prove to me that brain scanning and bicycling go hand in hand.
Okay. Yeah, so actually the day that we did that shoot was a pretty good day for getting data. So I'll kind of go back in there and sort of drill down a little bit into the ride that Lucas took in this segment. So as you saw in the segment, there are two sort of legs of this ride. There was a high intensity ride and there was a low intensity. A high intensity ride in like a very busy part of Brooklyn, and a low intensity ride in Prospect Park, which is one of the most leafy, park-like parks. And so, we can like sort of drill down a little bit more into where you see some of those hotspots, and a lot of those hotspots, particularly in his interaction with people, and two, with vehicles. So people as in, getting verbal directions from the production team, as in getting sandwiched between all kinds of cars. And then part of the conversation after this particular ride, it was really interesting to see sort of his data turn green, where I'm delineating, or where I'm pointing to that on the map. And he said to me that it was at that point where he kind of felt himself get into the rhythm of that traffic. And sort of, he felt like, oh, this traffic is all crazy, but I'm kind of going to get crazy too. So, he'd like jump on curbs and, and like make quick turns. And I thought that was kind of interesting, in that, what we're finding with sort of putting the mind rider on a lot of different kinds of people is that, even though there's a quantitative element to this device, to this product, everyone has a very different data set. And so, there are some commonalities, in that interacting with traffic, interacting with humans, can, whether they be in cars or not, can produce sort of more intense